Welcome to the Improviding Life podcast, where we explore how life can be more livable. This is Lori Love, your host, and we are back with a super special announcement, celebration, and mini season. Cheers for 6 years, Improviding Life Lessons Learned, anniversary edition. So, Improviding Life is turning 6 on June 19th, 2025, and I am a little flabbergasted on how time is timing, Panini and COVID speeding up things so fast. I would maybe believe if someone said it had been 3 years, but 6 years seems what? So, in this episode, I'm going to do a sort of mashup reflection of each of the 6 years that I've been in business, layered over or inspired by the 6 tools of improvising, because isn't that cute how those numbers and the frameworks worked out together? Of course they did. That's the magic. So let's get started. So that first year of June 2019 through May 2020 was the season of yes and my takeaways from this first year of business is your ideas are good enough. The fact that you have the inspiration, the ideas, the creativity coming through to do something, that is more than enough of a sign that it is worthwhile trying them out. The next lesson learned is that beginners are brave, and the simplicity they bring is special. When I look back at my Instagram feed in particular, that first year, it's the true essence of what I wish I would have experienced more of throughout the whole 6 years. We'll get to that later. Because I wasn't trying to do the business part yet, right? I was simply inspired by and guided by the creativity, the ideas, the tools of improvising themselves, and playing in the space of possibility. And seeing, well, at the time it didn't feel brave. It just felt natural to share, but now as I'm trying to reclaim that spirit, that energy, I can see how brave it really is that I allowed those ideas to be enough and played to that space. And the third takeaway for year one is that tailoring your talents to the times that you're in is where that magic and sustainability intersect. So the last few months of that first year of being in business is when the pandemic started, lockdown happened, and the one example that came through of tailoring, my talents to the times that we were all navigating was this idea in this series that I did called Commute to Community. And so what I did each day for at least a few weeks before I stepped away from it was transition the time that I would have been spent commuting each weekday going to work into a time where I would create a video or training or put something up, usually on YouTube, to offer that community time, that connection time that during lockdown we were not having. Whether that was pulling cards, doing a guided movement practice, rearrange my room with me, all of the various elements or themes that I can remember happening. And really being in that spirit of yes-anding what moment we were in and allowing and providing life to be enough and how we were in those moments together. For year two, using the tool If So, What Else? This was June 2020 to May 2021. The life lessons learned were that each offer gets to be an experiment. So actually starting to not just post content and show the framework or the tools, all of the ideas that were inspiring and exciting to me that I knew could be helpful to others, but actually starting to put things out there, trying to get some engagement, trying to offer those tools as supportive elements for someone else. Another lesson was that your supporters will show you your strengths. I was receiving so much engagement and people really seeing me amidst it all and recognizing the unique way that I was doing something, or how meaningful it was to them to have, what I was sharing out be accessible to them. And so I was able to see so many commonalities in what people were reflecting back to me, that I can see that that's where things felt the easiest to be doing and showing up, and that is where I was able to make that impact that I so longingly wanted to make. And then also reflecting on how that recognition led to this very podcast coming to life. So that began in 2020 as well. So, and transitioning into 2021. And so being able to see that, getting that recognition in and essentially showing up, because I was letting my inspiration and the ideas be good enough, led to these next steps. And even thinking itself that the podcast is in its 5th year is also very surprising, because again, I feel like 2 or 3 of these years the math wasn't mathing on time. so in the sake of that tool of if so what else, acknowledging that now that we have this foundational year in, we have these ideas out, what else can we create with it? And that's really the spirit that came through in year 2. For year 3, which was tool A to C, that was June 2021 to May 2022. The lessons learned were that transitions aren't always trying. So this was my transition into motherhood. My little one was born in October of 2021. And I feel like I absolutely rocked it and loved the newborn and infant stage. Like that what felt like such a natural transition for me, that I wouldn't have known that would have been my experience before it happened. And so while I took some time off from my day job and from business, I found myself having the energy, mostly because newborns just chill and sleep and hang out, to be creating and putting my creative energy out there. And that it also helped me find a sense of connection with sharing out my experiences as a first-time parent, right? And this was the season when, I believe Mercury was 3 weeks old when I self-published the Body Bottle Breast Digest, Parent Pocket Pal, which is, there's a longer title, but the postpartum support guide, because it felt like motherhood was at its simplest. And I also realized I needed tools to help myself navigate some of these things that I didn't know I'd be navigating until it happened. And if I'm already making it for myself, why wouldn't I also make it available for others? And continually, since, that's almost 4 years ago, I still continue to periodically order additional copies and resources and donate those out. And, always try to carry 1 or 2 in my purse to be giving out and to be engaging with people in that way, and think of it as a way to just, pass along a little gift here and there. And that continues to bring me these meaningful moments of outreach and connection. And the third takeaway from that year, and the spirit of A to C, which again is seeing where all of these little cookie crumbs take you, seeing what's possible when you let go of the idea that it has to be just one way and see what comes through, is that it was a season of collaborations and having guests, appearances and interactions, and also sharing the load of the changes I was navigating. This was very much a season where I was in some very supportive coaching, like group mentorship programs. I also, we had a lot of guests on the Improviding Life podcast, which I absolutely loved. I feel like I'm in my most natural state interacting with people. And, that the spirit of improv comes through best on guest episodes. And that is something that I've been missing doing a lot, is having that energy to play with. And that sometimes when we're in a season of change, if we're able to see the ways we might be resisting or fighting it, we can actually have greater opportunities to bring in other avenues of change, right? So if we're already, feeling light on our feet because we're being nimble and changing, what other changes might make sense for that season? And that was really a lesson that was coming through. For year 4, which is tool ID the ship, This was June 2022 to May 2023. This is where we're going to rock the boat a little bit and just see how, in the spirit of change, as I was just saying, life started to life a different way for me. How I was experiencing it was different. So the first lesson as I reflect back is that, it's totally possible to realize you're in a space of overthinking and underserving. So what that means is I found myself trying to be more of a, quote, formal business. And in doing that, I ended up getting really bogged down and out of a space of my creativity. So in reflection or comparison to how I mentioned in the first year, it felt like my ideas were enough and I was just playing in the space of those ideas. In year 4, I found myself not thinking my ideas were enough, that they had to be doing more, or that I had to have business structured a certain way, and it was really about business being something rigid and stuffy, and not realizing it while I was in the thick of it that that's what was happening. And so along that process, the sort of second lesson that I'm realizing as I spend time to reflect is that business got coded as work to me. And I have something called pathological demand avoidance, sort of one of the sub-flavors of my ADHD, where when something is coded as work or demand, it is viscerally difficult, like physically painful to do, because it puts me in fight or flight. It makes me feel unsafe. It makes me feel so depleted. So essentially the idea of being in and with my business started to be experienced in my body and my mind as like a hyena is chasing me, and I have a fractured ankle, so I'm barely squabbling along, and eventually they're going to get me, right? It's no longer a place of possibility and playfulness, but one of struggle and survival. And so along that experience, things have gotten very vanilla and not nourishing, especially in that comparison of year 1 to year 4. And I want to acknowledge too that, there's that saying of like comparison is the thief of joy, or something on that lines. But because I'm choosing right now to actively be in a moment of reflection, I think that comparison is needed, because it helps me see, oh yeah, well, no wonder my experience the second half of my business has been so different, because I was navigating all these other things. So it's very purposeful that I'm in this space of reflection. And then the third takeaway or lesson learned from year 4 is that having systems in place does make a difference. So in that process of trying to be more of a business, some systems of having, a hosting site for courses, or having a consistent email platform, some of those things did make a great difference, because then I'm spending less time trying to figure out where to start, and I have a place to arrive. So that was one helpful step. And also acknowledging that it was still difficult to have the creative energy to be sharing and making things, because of all the other layers that I've just mentioned. I'm pausing for a spoon of ice cream. You may not know this, but I got myself a to-go piece of cake and ice cream to celebrate with you all while recording this, and have a little business birthday party in my car before I go do some more creative administrative work at a local cafe. So thank you for that little snack break with me. Okay. And now year 5, which is the tool of build versus invent. This is June 2023 to May 2024. Our first lesson learned is that your boat only floats as full as your cup is, right? So this is where some chronic illness things started to come up. This is where time really started to speed up the past 2 years for me. And I believe that for many people, this may have also been when things started registering of how long the pandemic had been going on, how many social and political and economic things started to really layer on top of each other. So a lot was happening. And so, this experiencing this constant sense of depletion, it's very difficult to create from that space. So now I can understand why business started looking and feeling very, very different than the first 3 years of my experience. The next lesson learned is that things get to have their own sort of time frame or lifeline, and endings can be a good thing. They can be because it's the right moment, because something feels complete. And the specific example with this was, this was a time when I was launching and testing out the Shit Shifter Society. Absolutely was an incredible experience. We did 2 rounds. I loved it so much. And also towards the end of the second round, because of my chronic illness, things coming up, and the exhaustion I was experiencing, I absolutely needed to close down that monthly membership group, coaching experience, because if I can't show up in a way that feels like what people deserve to be engaging with, it's against my ethics and beliefs to then be still cosplaying as someone who can show up in the way that I intend. But I'm so grateful that I still, amidst, the difficulties of year 4 and 5, followed, and again, going back to year 1, that idea of ideas are good enough. The Shit Shifter Society kept coming back around as an idea for all of those 5 years, and I finally was able to be brave and try it and begin, right? And perhaps that's something, in upcoming seasons of life, I'll revisit, because it was so enjoyable, and, I had such great feedback from the members in it. And also, it was totally right to pause it at the time that I did. And lastly, that lesson learned for year 5 was that, I didn't let what once worked be good enough. And what I mean by that is seeing too that, again, I mentioned this briefly, but the ideas themselves, improvising tools themselves, the play was, again, not seeming like it was doing enough, because I wasn't experiencing all of these things that, quote, I was told should be happening by this point in business. And not only that, but I was so mentally exhausted and physically exhausted that I couldn't always see how truly supportive the tools of Improviding are for me, right? I always have believed in complete conviction that they are great for the people that I work with. Absolutely. But I forget that means that I also deserve to use them for myself, right? It was very easy to think that I didn't deserve to experience the ease, the sense of support, the lightheartedness, the possibility, the play for my own self, because things weren't quite working out the way I thought. So maybe, year 5 was some heavier lessons learned, but necessary and needed for me to have this reflection, right? Because getting back to this place where realizing that it is okay if I use a tool or practice for myself, right? I deserve to benefit from that as well. It's not, I don't have to be a martyr for anything. Things aren't worth it only if other people benefit, right? I actually have more capacity and ability to lead from my own experiences if I'm using them for myself. And that's where then the deep relationships that I've been so blessed to form with clients, especially clients who are now friends, comes from is me practicing it for myself. And now we're at year 6, which is tool I've Got Your Back. And this is June 2024 to May 2025. The first lesson learned is saying yes to the wrong things is saying no to yourself. This year was really, I was starting to get some answers about some of the illnesses and physical ailments I was experiencing, and also felt this need that I had to play catch up, right? So this was a time frame where, especially the first half of this year, I was taking on way too many grant clients. The aspect of my business that was really just from this place of I can do it and I can at least get income from it, not from this place of, oh, this really lights me up and I feel like this is the work I should be doing, right? It was very, I have too much to lose if I don't energy. And so I say yes to a lot of great clients, but that so stretched me thin and made not only all my day job full-time hours, writing grants, which is depleting to me, but then also any free time that I, quote, could even possibly have as a toddler parent. Parent to a toddler. So that is a huge lesson learned. I'm still navigating how to reestablish boundaries and decisions. So I essentially fired myself from grant writing for clients, and once all of those client engagements that I had ended, most of them around December of 2024, not a single one has been accepted since, because not meant to happen. The second lesson learned this year is that sometimes there are no words because you don't have anything to say. Quite a few people, once I was catching up with them, was like, why didn't you reach out and say anything? I could have done, there could have been something. But the challenge with having such a wonderful community of people who don't live geographically nearby, which is my current life situation, is that the things that I physically needed help with were very physically proximate things that couldn't have been supported from a distance. And it felt like additional emotional labor for me to be constantly sharing my accurate location with people, but then also having to say, oh yeah, thanks for offering, but no, there's nothing you can do, right? It was a way that I initially realized I was overextending myself even more. So I did have this major sort of retreat back, and yes, at many times it felt like at the cost of meaningful relationships or really energy coming in that felt engaging and felt nutritive. But I also just didn't have anything to say. I was truly in survival mode. And the more I would try to force something to say, the worse it felt, because even at this moment I'm trying to reflect on it, there just was nothing to say. And I think that my inability right now to elaborate further speaks for itself, that is the whole point of that reflection. Is that if you find yourself having nothing to say about something, that's a clue, and be curious about that clue. And thirdly, for this lesson learned for year 6, as we're finishing up now and going in to our new year, is that red lights don't last forever. Green still means go. And what that means is the last 2 months in particular, I have been sort of thawing out from the freeze. I have had creative ideas. I've been reaching out and sharing. I've had a few clients in the month of May, which was just so refreshing. It's helped reinvigorate in this beautiful spiral of going back to this yes and energy that my ideas are good enough. These were clients, the 2 clients that I had one-to-ones with in May were both people that I worked with starting all the way back in year 1 of my business. And it felt like we didn't miss a beat. And both people gave such beautiful reflections of, this is exactly what I needed when I needed it. I don't know how you do it, but I'm so grateful that you do. And that's, again, so affirming as I'm in this season of reflection, but also committing to that idea that green still means go. Okay, I have some clarity, some energy, some life force right now. So I get to embrace the change of saying, okay, the past 2.5 years of feeling very stuck at a red light are gone. I don't need to make a larger narrative of it. I don't need to stay stuck. It is time to allow the ideas and the idea of improv itself and playing with it be enough. So those are my reflections. I do also want to share, though, that I want this whole month to be sort of Embody Improv month, where we're embodying the spirit of improv. Yes, I acknowledge the month is almost halfway over. It's okay. We're going to do what we can with time, and we're just trusting it. But what that also means is that I want to have a party. I want to have some bingo vibes. So I, after recording this, I'm going to go set up all the other admin things for all of this, these updates I'm giving now to be possible. But everything is going on sale that I have or do, from this place of wanting some bingo vibes. Everyone wins. Let's celebrate. So everything is going to be either $6, $66, $166, that type of number play to play on being in business for 6 years. And also for one lucky winner, I feel like I'm on a 1990s late night radio show. Thanks for calling in, caller. What song do you request? Those types of vibes. For anyone who's listening to this, if you leave a review for this podcast on any of the platforms that you use, whether, that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what have you, if you leave a review and email me or DM me a little screenshot of your review so I know who it is, you go into a drawing, and the winner will receive whichever of my offerings or services they want to choose. That could be ranging from my Wake Up Willingly course, which will be $6 instead of $11.11, right? That could be what you want. Or it could also be a 1-to-1 boxer day with me, which would be $166. So you get to choose your own price, because that's the vibes we have here. But you have until the end of June to leave that review and send it to me. And the beginning of July, I will be picking the winner and sharing those results out. But I just wanted to thank you all for being here with me. This is a very fun process, I would say, of going back and seeing of sense making of, what for me has felt like X amount of time may not have been a blink of an eye for any of you listening, or perhaps you've also been like, I realized that, there's been longer time between episodes here, whatever, so if you also have any feedback or thoughts or just anything that resonates, you can also share all those things as well. So, also I didn't quite mention that, my email, if you don't have it memorized now, how couldn't you, right? From all the other ends of podcast episodes, will also be in the show notes, but it is hello@Lori, Lori, Crawford.me. And I'm still on Instagram, although I am transitioning to being more of I'll have like a set grid on there and showing up more in stories and on threads, and really making some intentional shifts, because we're here for the sustainability game, and so I'll be making sure all those announcements are, just transparent, and that you know where I am and what's going on. But I so appreciate you, and you know what time it is, right? It's time to have a razzle-dazzle day. And if that's not accessible, you can always put an F on front and have a frazzle-dazzle day. See you next time.